In this episode, I talked to Annie Cree, a mom of four, head of youth fitness, and a member of the Mohawk Nation. And we chat about, the differences between having your kids in your 20s versus your 30s, and then how finding activity like hiking can be really helpful for self-care and mental health in the postpartum period. So I hope you enjoy this episode. All right. I am incredibly excited to have a chat today with Annie Cree. Annie is a mom of four that was introduced to me by a friend of mine that I used to run with from high school. And I reached out to him and I said, hey, is there somebody in your community that you think is just doing an amazing job postpartum and really should be highlighted? And my friend Tony, our mutual friend Tony, mentioned Annie's name. And we got connected over Facebook and are getting to chat today. And so, Annie Cree, thanks so much for being on the show.
I'm so glad to be here. I was kind of a little excited and curious to see what what exactly this was all about.
Yeah. No, nothing scary, I promise. No, when I was kind of reading up on you a little bit, there's a lot that you're really active in your community. You do a lot with fitness for kids, and I'm like, there's a story behind this. So tell us
Yeah.
a little bit. You grew up in the Mohawk Nation, and that's where you live now. And you've got a couple of kids, but they're ages are sort of spread apart and so on. Tell us a little bit about just the quick overview. How did we get to four kids?
Well, I grew up, I lived mostly in the same house pretty much my whole life growing up. We lived on the Ontario portion of Akwesasne. I am the third of four girls.
Your mom had her hands
Oh,
full, didn't
goodness.
she? Your
Yeah,
mom
she
had her
did.
hands
Oh,
full.
yeah. So
And you're
out of high school, I went away to college and then I came home for a while. I had two children young, one when I was 20 and one when I was 22. And at the time it was lots of drinking, lots of hanging out and going out. So I pulled myself and my family away from that and became a single mom young. And I had always been an athlete. So, being a young mom, a single young mom, I still did play like hockey and lacrosse and all of that. And then I put myself through school and got a job and raised my children. And then 10 years later, I started to expand my family. I got married. I had two more children. So, yeah, the ages are pretty out there. 22-year-old, a 20-year-old, an 11, and an 8-year-old.
that's
And weirdly, it goes boy, girl, boy, girl. So,
ah, that you should put that's an interesting mix. That's great.
and I always say that my boys are 10 years apart and my girls are 10 years
Oh
apart.
my goodness.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
for you, when you think back to the first round of boy girl, what was that pregnancy like? What was that postpartum like? And did you have, was there anything, kind of passed down from your mom, from your grandmother, like, hey, this is what pregnancy is supposed to be like. This is what you should do in postpartum. Or were you kind of, flying by the seat of your pants?
Oh, I find when you're pregnant and the first time, I find everybody wants to tell you the horror stories of
Yes.
pregnancy and labor. And so to me, I had that fear of the labor, the whole
Mm,
pregnancy, and that's all you hear is, oh, when I had, and it doesn't have, so,
yep.
so I have learned when people ask, I always say, I enjoy my labors, like it, it wasn't, like being young when you have your children. you're kind of in that state where I don't care, like
Yeah.
I'm gonna do what I want to do. So my mom had always told me from a young age that, once you have your children, you have to change this, you have to change that. And being a teenager, you're like, I will never, like I'm always
Right?
going to be this way.
Right?
And then as soon as I had my son, I was like, oh my goodness, I can't do that. Oh my goodness, I
Yeah.
can't. So I did. It was almost like I had my son and I instantly grew up. And
Yep.
um at the time I was 20, and I just think of how fast I changed in that time period. And I look at my daughter who's 20 right now and think like I was just a baby, like,
Right.
and I see my daughter, and she's going to be a senior next year at Paul Smith's College, and I just keep thinking like how would that be, like how would it
Yep.
be? I can't even imagine her in that stage.
Well, and probably 20 years ago, too, I mean, we weren't having conversations about how to recover and how to get back to work, how to exercise. Those conversations really weren't happening.
Yes.
So if we fast forward to your second round of boys and girls, that you said 11 and
Yes.
8, how was
Yep.
that different for you, already
Um,
having 2 kids under your belt, but this is, there's been a little bit of a gap?
it's weird because I thought that being young and having children, I would be so full of energy. I would do all of these things with my children because like I'm
Right.
still early 20s. But it wasn't until I had my son and my daughter, and at 35, we are like hiking mountains and kayaking, and I'm coaching sports and they're playing sports, and we are, like just almost like exploring everything, like
Yeah.
because when in my childhood we were so stuck on the norm in the community. We only played hockey, we only played lacrosse because those were the big things in our community.
Right.
And I says, who knows, maybe I could have been a professional handball player, like I don't know. I had
Right?
not a big love for these sports, but I was good at them, so I kind of got like far playing them. But
Yep.
in my mind, I'm like, well, let's try everything.
Yeah.
My first two were so mellow and shy that I couldn't get them to play sports. So I was like,
Yeah.
that's fine. We'll do other things. My daughter's an artist. My son is very he's very like mechanics or
Mhm.
labor, stuff like that. He likes to work in that field, whereas my daughter likes to be an artist, and she's very nature, like a lot of the stuff that I do now,
Mhm.
land-based teachings, and she's learning about um she's going to be an environmental science major,
Ah,
I
that's
believe.
fantastic.
Yeah.
So
So,
what was it this second time around? I know you kinda mentioned on, in the, stuff that you had forwarded me that you got into hiking as a
yeah.
challenge. Was that kind of the turning point for you where like, "Okay, I'm gonna be active. I'm gonna bring my
Mhm.
kids along for the ride. I'm gonna teach other kids how to do this." What was kind of that turning point for you?
Well, for me, um, it was shortly after I had my daughter. I had my daughter in September. So, with September, like it wasn't until towards the end of the winter, about February, March, I could feel like like I felt like I knew I wasn't all right.
Mhm.
I knew there was something missing. And for my two younger children, I had a hard time with nursing them,
Mm,
breastfeeding them, and I couldn't understand why. So at about 4 months, I just kind of gave up my little fight for trying to breastfeed. Like it was to me, it was like there was no small victories. There
yeah,
wasn't anything for me to continue to me at that point. I was just done. Like I was just defeated.
yeah.
And it was something that I had to try to, like it'll be fine, like tell myself it's gonna be all right, it's gonna be fine. And like she started sleeping through the night. She started, I wasn't producing enough for her. So
Mm,
it started to get better, and she started sleeping the night, and so there was all these little positives going on. So I was like, okay, everything's good. And then towards that, I always, when I reference it for um like for mental health, and like helping to do my speeches about the winter blues and everything,
yeah.
it's always like the middle of February, that
Yes.
last where you think winter's over and you get that one last storm or something about.
Especially in New York
Yeah.
State.
Yes.
Especially
Winter.
in New York State.
Oh,
I don't think I
yeah.
realized the sun could shine more than a few days in a row until I moved down here. Like, "Oh,
Yeah.
we can do this." Winters are very long in New York, and especially your part. So
Yeah.
I'm
So,
thinking too, for you, 20 years ago, there weren't lactation consultants. There wasn't public recognition of postpartum depression. There wasn't really much, conversation. There wasn't, Instagram, social media, internet access to be able to
yeah.
feel like you're not alone and that, you're not doing something wrong. Like at that point, did you have any resources in your community or people that you reached out to kind of be like, hey, this is good. I can stop breastfeeding. I can keep going. Or was it really just kind of an internal fight?
To me, I think the reason why I didn't reach out was because of feeling like embarrassed, like
Yeah.
that that feeling that this is what I'm supposed to be doing and
Right.
I can't.
Yep.
So I spoke to my husband and I told him a couple months later, like I'm not all right, and I even the words I used was I can't find my happy, you know.
Yeah.
Um and there was a and I told him, I said, I don't know what it is, everything's going good. The kids are all healthy,
Yep.
nobody's sick. I have an amazing husband, like
Yeah.
I couldn't pinpoint why I couldn't get myself to leave my room,
Yeah.
or leave my house. I started working from home specifically so I didn't have to be around people.
Yeah.
And I had told him there's something wrong with me, and I think I might have to go see somebody, talk to somebody and see what's going on because I don't feel okay. So I had watched this podcast about it was a story about a woman who had, like um she had like the hardest time, and so she decided she was gonna go hiking. It was gonna give her what this happy, she told her story, and like hiking changed her life. It made her
Yeah.
happy. And she went to all of these doctors and tried antidepressants and everything, but she couldn't ever get over, so the next day I told him, I said, I'm gonna go hiking. I'm just gonna start hiking. So he's like,
We're just gonna
all
do this.
right. Well, it started out as the Saranac Sixer because unless you get into hiking, you don't really know where to start.
Right.
And then once I did start, next thing it's like, there's a trail here and there's a trail there. There's a trail
Right.
there. Like today I sent out like maybe 3 trail recommendations to people who are starting out. you
Mhm.
know, so it's just kind of having that first step in the door. So I started with the Saranac Sixer, which is it's like a hiking patch,
Mhm.
and it has 6 particular mountains only because it gives you the directions to each of these mountains.
Ah, there you go. That's good.
So
Directions are important.
so yeah, so I started there, and it it just went from there. You know,
Yeah.
every weekend we ended up going hiking. I completed the Sixer, and you know, like it just started from there, and it just grew and grew and grew. You know, like the hiking group now, um, I have to cap it because so many people will come out, and New York State regs only allows your group to be so big.
Gotta love
So,
New York State.
I know. I know. I get
Err.
scared.
No, I know.
Well,
Yeah, I understand. We used to live next to a state rec area where actually I used to ski with Tony, and we'd always worry that
yeah,
somebody come in and rat on us for doing something wrong.
right? It is. And uh it
So
does.
for
It gets okay.
I was gonna say for you, kind of looking back on those first hikes, how did you know that was the thing that was going to help you find your happy? Did you have a feeling? Did you like what was it for you?
For me, I had asked one of my like childhood friends to come with me,
Mhm.
and to me, it a lot of it has to depends on who you go with. You know, the
Mm,
conversation, the pace, all of that, and it just turned out to be perfect. And you know, to me, my friend that went with me has always been a safe space, you know.
yeah.
So being able to, you know, the first hike we did was probably about 4 hours. And to
Oh
be
my
able
goodness.
to have a 4 hour conversation,
Yeah.
you know, in a safe space is super key, especially um, when you feel that way and you want to be able to open up to somebody and be okay. Like I opened up to my husband, but you know, he's supportive no matter what, you
Right.
know? So
It's
to
different.
me,
You
it's
wanna say the things you wanna say. Yes. No, I totally
yeah,
understand.
you know, I want to burn that mailbox down. Oh, go for it. I'll be right here.
Right?
You know, like that's not gonna help me, you know, like I want that constructive criticism, not constructive criticism. I want that constructive feedback,
Yeah.
and you know, like, and her being a mom, I also, you know, also needed to hear from another mom that it is okay to not be able to do that. It is okay to make those decisions. It is okay, you know, like, and to be able to feel okay to be doing this journey without my little ones, you know? And I
Yes.
find that there's so much mom guilt,
Yes.
and we carry it. We carry it with us regardless of if we say we don't, you know, and it's
Yeah.
always there in the back of our minds, like, oh God, my daughter's got her jammies on again at Walmart, you know, like but at the same time, you know, like we don't care, but in a way we do, you know, like
Yeah.
after I find that that's a huge difference from being a young mom and um a 20-year-old mom and a 35-year-old mom. When I was 20, I would get stares at my children's pajamas at Walmart. You know, at 35, I just give the stare right back. You know, like it's different. You know, like I feel a lot more confident as a parent now than I did
Yeah.
when I was younger because you know it wasn't only that I was 20, it was also that I looked so young lugging
Right.
around my 1-year-old and my 3-year-old, you know, like I
Yeah.
find you don't get as much almost like as much respect as a parent when you're younger than when you're older, and
It's
that was
interesting.
it
Yeah,
was
it's interesting you say that because I'm sorry, I think we've got a little bit of a lag. I don't mean to talk over
yeah.
you. Um,
uh,
where I live, the average age of moms that I work with is easily over 35.
yeah.
Um, and they're trying to have kids as quickly as they can because the clock's running out. And I think I was 34 when I had my first. I think
Mm,
physically I could have handled it much better in my 20s, but mentally, gosh, I just
no.
yeah, I don't know that I really could have, and I can't imagine what it's like for you now to look at your daughter who's the age that you were when you had your first. That must be a quite an
Oh,
experience.
it is.
So when you are organizing these groups and you have new people that are coming into the group and you recognize that you have somebody maybe who's, a mom and they're considering kind of trying hiking out, like what advice do you have for them? How do you kind of how do you help them figure out where to start and how to kind of find their own journey?
um I always make sure to let them know that it is okay to go at their own pace.
Mm,
I find when we do group hikings, it gets a lot for moms, especially with little ones, because
mhm.
there are some that come without kids or
Yep.
have a faster pace. So a lot of times, I will do specific wise hiking groups. So if I get a mom that is trying as first time out with a little one, um, I I will suggest like, hey, let's do a carrier
Yeah.
check. And, you know, I have her come in and we'll try out carriers. And she, like I always tell her, you want to make sure that it's adjusted for you before you get there.
Yes.
Um, Whether or not your baby prefers a cloth or
Yep.
the hiker, like I s- I'll have them come in and fit it and see how it feels. And then before we go hiking, I'll have them, why don't you take it home for the week, try it out, let the baby get used to it, maybe try
Mhm.
and go out for a mile, see how they do, like you'll know right away if your baby needs to be given some time to get comfortable with it or if they love it.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
one or the other. There's no like halfway and they just decide they don't want to commit to a carrier.
I
The
I think that's
babies,
great advice because even if
yeah,
I remember when we bought our first pack carrier, you think,
yeah,
"Well, great, they did great in the front, it would be totally fine for them to go back there," but it's a whole different level of logistics, and I remember even just switching the pack between my husband and myself, everything had to be readjusted and, going
yeah,
into a group setting, you're trying to meet new people and you've got all these other logistical things going on. So I'm so glad that you meet with them ahead of time. That's fantastic.
yeah.
What about
It also, oh,
go ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, it also helps the mom be ready too, because it it is hard to show up and then feel like you're holding everybody back because you have
Mhm.
to, how do you do this? How do you do that? This doesn't
Right.
feel right. This doesn't, and then to turn around and baby not like it or your
Right.
little one not like it. And I always say, like, take your time. It's not going anywhere. The
Yeah.
summit's not going anywhere. It's gonna
No,
be
that's
there.
true. That's true.
Like if you have a toddler and they want to get out, let them get out and walk and hold their hand. That's how they build up to not needing the carrier. Um, my daughter was just one of those little ones that would be able to hike crazy mileage without a carrier, and
Mhm.
that's why like a lot of times I'm completely shocked at her accomplishments at 8 years old. She has like 28 hiking patches, and I think her longest hike was like almost 12
Oh
miles.
my goodness. She's quite the little hiker, isn't she?
She is. And my son hikes. He doesn't like hiking, but he hikes.
Mhm.
Whereas with her, she's okay, is this a mission hike or are we dilly-dallying? You know, like she's at the point where she wants to know what she's expecting, you know?
What's the intention of the hike? I like it. I
Yeah.
like it.
And she's 8, you know,
Oh my
so
goodness.
she has been my little hiking baby.
Well, it's nice to
But
have
yeah,
one of it's well, and I was just thinking, I mean, you were saying that your one son doesn't like to hike and your daughter does, and I think that's something really important too when you have small children because in your head, ideally they're going to love what you love to do, and if you demonstrate it for them, if that becomes part of, normal everyday, activities or weekend activities, ideally it would become the same for them too, but that's not always the
mm,
case. And I
right.
think it's important too that, you know, it's great if you take your kid out, but it's also, like you mentioned earlier, it's also okay to have that time for yourself if your kids don't wanna do that.
Yeah.
Have some grace for yourself and also have, they can kinda pick and choose. My son's the same way. He prefers
Mhm.
not to necessarily run or things like that, where my daughter, she's more my active one, and they're just
Yeah.
different kids.
Right? They are.
They're just different
Oh,
kids. So for
yeah.
you, kind of I have a couple questions that I ask, kind of at the end. One is, what's your favorite activity that you love to do for yourself since becoming a mom? So you've got a few years to choose from here.
Yes. Um, I I don't know. I just enjoy like doing this stuff with my family. You
Yeah.
know, like not very often my grown children want to do anything with me with the little ones, you know, like but when they do, they know it's they know it's important and it's like my favorite, you know, so they do put in the effort for it.
Yeah.
So that is my favorite when we do actually get a chance to do like a family day or family
Yeah.
vacation or you know it's my favorite. And even even when we got married and we went to our honeymoon, we brought our kids because
Ah,
it's I don't know what we do without them, you know,
right?
because they're so they're I don't know, they're basically like our favorite people, you know.
Yeah.
And
Have they kind
it's
of
nice.
have they inspired
Yeah.
you for the work that you do with the youth fitness and things like that? Is that where a lot of the inspiration comes from?
Mm, yep, all my programming is based off of stuff that I have done with my kids or stuff that my kids have taught me that I didn't know that I think parents want to know, you know.
Mhm.
So, a lot of the family hiking is based around you know, letting them know it's okay, you know, like to go hiking even if your kids don't want to. And that's
Yeah.
the first thing that they always say to me is, "Oh, your kids must love it outside." No, no, they don't, you know, but building those habits and, you know, like my son and I said he don't like to go hiking, but he'll be like, "Okay, where are we hiking today?"
Oh, that's fun.
Because
So he
he
knows it's
knows it's
coming. He knows it's coming. I
yeah.
I remember hikes with, my parents were I mentioned earlier, my parents were both teachers, and so we got to travel in the summer, and I remember going on some hikes were, like, 15 miles long in the beginning. I remember being very unhappy. And by
Mhm.
the end, we're joking, and I have a brother and sister, and so in the beginning, we're torturing each other, but by the end,
Yeah.
everybody's, all, happy, and, I forgot about that, yes, they might be grumpy in the beginning, but put a few mi
Yep.
miles underneath them, and they'll be fine by the end.
I was just telling a mom that the other day because I said, Ellie's excited to hike, but Wallace, I said, the whole ride, I have to drag him out of the house. The whole ride, he complains. I says, a
Yep,
quarter into the hike, it's a different
it's a
child.
different
They
story,
said, and
yes,
then on the way home, he's like, wow, that was such a great day.
right? Right?
Um,
That does not change from the time they are little to when they are older. The key is get them out of the house, get them out of the car, get them on the trail, and
yeah,
then you have a chance and bring snacks.
yeah. And one really big thing with why, like, I have to bring Wallace with me because he was diagnosed a few years ago with ADHD,
Mm.
and his teachers can tell on the weeks that he doesn't hike.
Ah, it's a way he gets his energy out. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
So I continue, come on, Wallace, we gotta go for a hike, you know?
Yep.
And I can tell because when we don't hike, he seems to get frustrated a lot easier.
Yes. And that's a
So,
great observation to have too. If it I'm thinking actually about my mom right now because we see they're on the West Coast. I see them maybe once a year now. And, I see it in my mom. My mom needs to be she needs to go out for exercise. She needs to go out for a walk just like, our younger kids do. And so
yeah,
just like we do, we need to have our
right.
exercise too. But
Oh, I
it's so
know.
great that you know this about your kids, you know that everybody has a reason for being out there that might be all different, but we all need to get out for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
All right, one piece of
Yeah.
advice for new moms. If you had to do it over again, what's the thing that you would wanna know?
I would, um, there's so many. There's so many
Yep,
like little, but for new moms, I would be more um be more patient with yourself, like
yeah.
be more I'm so sorry, I can't even think of the word, like
No, you're
it's not
fine.
patient, it's you know, um be kinder to yourself. Not everybody's pregnancy or postpartum or any of that looks the same. I've
Yeah,
had 4 children and not one of my postpartum has been the same.
yeah.
Um, my boys' pregnancies were exactly the same and my girls, you know. I knew I was having a boy because of the way my pregnancy was, you
Oh, isn't
know.
that funny?
They were that different, you know.
Mm.
But
I've
yeah,
asked that question to at least 20 guests, and I would say 98% of them has that same answer. That's the one
yeah,
thing that always comes across is that we need to give ourselves a little bit more grace.
yeah.
And then last thing that I always ask is for you, what does it mean to you to be an active mom in postpartum? And I really feel like you totally embody this between your activity with kids and your youth group and all of that. So what does it mean to you?
I think whatever you want to do, whatever you want to try, like
Yeah.
I'm, like like I'm still trying new things. I'm still learning new things. And for me, as I learn them and become comfortable with them, I would like to share them,
Yeah.
so that more moms, more families, more kids, more adults, more just get out and enjoy,
Yeah.
like maybe it's the gym, maybe it's hiking, maybe it's kayaking, maybe it's playing a sport. Like I
Yep.
think that it's whatever you feel at that time.
Yeah. No.
And
Now you got
I
me
think
thinking about
that's
going for a
why
hike for Mother's Day now. Like, can we plan this? Can we
yeah,
make this a go? Oh my goodness. No, I love that.
right.
And you're making me miss New
Yeah.
York a little bit too, where you can just walk out your door
Oh,
and get to the trails pretty quickly. So
yeah. I live out there a lot. But
that
yeah, for Mother's Day, we have a group going for a waterfall painting class.
ooh, that sounds
And
fantastic.
this is our 5th year, and it's so exciting because it just grows,
Mhm. I get too
and
far too bad you're too far to come up for the weekend. I'd be up there
right?
painting with you. That sounds amazing.
Yeah,
Well,
it is, and it's self-care and the
Yes.
helping mom and everything all in one.
That sounds therapeutic and lovely, and I hope the weather holds
Yeah.
for it too. So
Oh my
awesome.
goodness, yes.
Well, Annie, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate you kind of sharing your story and talking about how you've kind of shared your love of activity, not only for your self care and mental health, but also for your kids as well. So thanks
Yeah.
so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.